I'm replacing the struts, wheel bearings, etc. Let's do this rapid fire. So support the vehicle in the middle. Throw 2 jack stands on one on either side. And take your lug nuts off. That's going to be, what, 19? 19 mil. Get off. Get that bitch out of the way. And then we're going to take off the brake caliper and support bracket as if we were doing a brake job. I should mention, I've seen people use bearing separators and all sorts of shit. So they'll pull the wheel hub out and then actually pull the bearing off of the hub. Why bother? These are cheap enough. If your bearings are shot, just fucking replace everything while you're in there. I'm doing lower control arms with the ball joint, the strut, the wheel hub, the bearing, the seals, the outer tie rod end, and the sway bar end link. And while you're at it, if your suspension and everything is worn out, this is 180,000 miles, and as far as I can tell, these are original shocks and everything else. And my ball joint on the other side was ripped, or at least the boot was completely ripped once I got it to swivel. But check out your brake soft lines. You can see mine starting to delaminate. They are dirt cheap to replace. And one of mine on Amazon fucking came with no copper washers, but I have some of those laying around. But anyway, we're gonna pop these off now. These are 14 millimeters. One here, one here. Number 1. And number 2 is a little awkward to get to with this big guy. Guess I could just use a fucking wrench. All right. With those removed, should be able to get the caliper out of the way. Typically, you don't want to hang it by the brake line. I am replacing the brake line, so I simply don't care. Let me work this guy off and we'll move on. Alrighty. Well, there's 2 17 millimeter bolts that hold in the brake caliper bracket. Those came out pretty easily for me. I did the brakes semi-recently. If you haven't done your brakes, this is a great time to do it. Make sure your slide pins are greased and still move freely. And yeah, once that bracket is off, we can move on to other items. So we will pull the rotor off, inspect. Feels like shit. Perfect. Set that aside. For my purposes, I'm going to go ahead and remove the dust shield. These are 14 millimeter bolts, if memory serves me correctly. And we've got 13s. Nope, they're 12s. So these are 12 millimeter bolts. There are 3 of them. One here, and one here. So we'll zip those off, pull the plate off. This is what you're left with. You're staring at your wheel hub. You got your cotter. Jesus Christ. You've got your castle nut here. You've got the 2 bolts that attach the knuckle to the strut. The upper one has a washer and the lower one doesn't. And I think this one has something to do with alignment, but I'm replacing all this shit, so I'm not going to pay any attention. If you're going to reassemble it, I believe you should make some kind of reference mark between the bolt and the strut. Anyway, there's some other 12 millimeter shit here. We've got an ABS speed sensor, I assume. We'll get that out of the way. Up here, you got your brake line support for the hose attached to the strut. That's also 12 mil. We'll get that out of the way. Could you get off my fucking, get off of there. Now this is the castle nut. You might want to break loose while the brakes are still on if you don't have impact tools. This is a 1 1/4 inch socket. I'm sure this is metric, but 1 1/4 fits well. There's usually a little spot where they've dimpled it down to keep it from coming off accidentally, but a good impact wrench. We'll just drive it straight off. So there's our castle nut. We do have a new one with the wheel hub I ordered, so I don't really care about that. At this point, once we get this loosened, and this is free of the splines for the axle shaft, which may not be the right terminology. I don't know. I'm a solid axle dude, but Once that's free, you could use a slide hammer to pull this wheel hub out. But that's not the way we're doing it. We are going to take the entire knuckle off, pop this bitch out, get the ball joint out and all that shit. So moving on here, let's go ahead and get rid of our sway bar end link and our tie rod and bolt. I'm not working in any particular order at the moment, but let's go ahead and unbolt the lower control arm. We've got 17 millimeter bolt and nut. I've got a wrench on the nut side here to brace it, and we'll zip that off real quick. Oh, there went my wrench. So, this is a 19 millimeter, though you may have to hammer it in place. Ow, son of a bitch. May have to hammer it in place, especially if you've got little pieces of cotter pin out there. Again, with an impact, we should be able to just kind of force our way past it. There we go. That's never coming out. And then we should be able to hammer this out. A lot of times I've seen guys just hit the side of the knuckle. Whatever works for you, works for you. Now my outer tie rod appeared fine until I moved it, at which point I started seeing milky, watery grease come out of the boot. That's going to get replaced later. I'm actually not taking that off in this video or tonight because you do want to count the number of revolutions coming off and try to match that going back on, assuming that the new one is the same length as the old one. But generally there's a lock nut here, and then there's a tab here where you can use to break this free. We're gonna leave that be for now. Sway bar end links are held on by two 17 millimeter. Yeah, two 17 millimeter bolts. Nuts. You may have to get vice grips around that side to hold it in place. And even then, sometimes that fails. If you can get the nut to come out to where you have some threads exposed, just take an angle grinder or a cutoff wheel on a cutting thing and use that. Let's just see if this you can see this one's just spinning. Yeah, it's fucked. So we'll cut that one off, and you know, for giggles, we might as well just cut this one off too. I use my little mini cutoff tool, but angle grinder is much faster. There's that one, which we should be able to just, there we go. And we'll work on hammering that out. And then this bottom one, yeah, we'll have to be a little more careful with that because actually, fuck it. That control arm's getting replaced. 14 millimeter bolt for the clamp on the bottom of the knuckle. Got that out. Now we want to separate the lower control arm with the attached ball joint from the knuckle. We want the knuckle coming out. So we're going to try a pry bar. We'll try a heat. We'll try a pickle fork if we need to. I don't know. Let's just see what works. Haven't done anything yet, but I am starting to hammer. Look at that. That easy, huh? Yep. The other side was not that simple. There we go. Sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and take the knuckle off of the strut at this point. Up here, I believe these are 19 millimeters. We'll grab our 19 and make sure. 19 top and bottom. You may need a socket or a wrench on one on the other side. Top has a washer, bottom does not. Top does something with alignment. I don't fucking know. I'm going to make a shop deal with it later. There we go. And bottom one will probably need, it'll probably just start spinning. Let's see. Could you get on there? Yeah, it started spinning. So I'll pop that one off with a wrench. All right, I got those two bolts, nuts, and the associated washers out. I did miss this other, I did miss this other 14 mil earlier. There we go. I'll just pop it back in there so we can hold on to it. And up top, we've got three 12mm bolts, nuts rather. There goes our strut. Okay, strut's loose. We should be able to work it out. There we go. She gone. During that process, the ball joint worked itself the rest of the way out of my my knuckle. On my other side, I was just kind of winging it, and I ended up with the ball joint stuck inside. And yeah, basically I cut it down here, not thinking about how it attached up here. So I'll have to press that out somehow because there's no threads left. Anyway, we should be able to get the hub off simply by pulling from the axle. I don't know if I can do this while holding the phone, but I'm just gonna turn this off and pull on this and it should pop out. 5 seconds later, there we go. There's our inner seal. And we just need to get our hub out of the knuckle. That's out of the way. I am going to take this clamp off, clean out the grease, and repack and reseal this, as well as clean these surfaces and grease them. I'm not worried about taking this ball joint out because my new lower control arms come with ball joints pre-installed, which is nice. So just all we have to do to remove the lower control arm is there's two 19mm bolts. There's one here, and there's one kind of up further on the other side. If you look at the brackets, you can see one's higher than the other. On the other side, I had a real hard time getting this out. I just heated this thing up for 2 or 3 minutes and life was good. So we'll give that a shot. There is a protective cover thing here. My other side didn't have it. I'm just gonna bend it out of the way or break it off, one of the two. 19mm number one. And there's 19mm number two for reference. We'll see if we can get it on here and see if we can bust it loose. Oh yeah. Hold on to that bolt. And at this point, the lower control arm should be ready to just come out. There she is. She gone. All right, for the next part, you really should go to a shop with a press or buy one of your own. Go to Vivor or Amazon. You can get a 6-ton press for $110, $120 shipped. I don't have one here tonight. So I need to get the hub out of the knuckle. The rear of these fuckers is such a bitch. Every company sells a loaded knuckle, but none seem to sell a loaded knuckle for the front, which I would have happily paid for. What's a shop press but a bottle jack on a nice frame? This doesn't really qualify as that, but we're gonna see if we can't pop it out. I got a 1 1/8 inch socket here. It's just basically it's the same size as the hub where it pops in to the knuckle. And I'm sure something's gonna explode. I am lifting my, yep. I'm just lifting my bench off the ground. So we'll scrap this idea. The other one, I had it supported like this, struck this with a sledgehammer a few times and it popped out. Let's give that a try. You know, I really don't feel like hitting shit with sledgehammer all night. So got something a little heavier and sturdier. This is a 1958 deuce and a half. Weighs about 14,000 pounds. So this will either explode violently or the hub will pop out of the knuckle. What's gonna give? The 14,000 pound truck or the knuckle from a little baby Subaru? We are actually lifting the lifting the truck right now. Is it a dumb idea if it works? But does it work? I guess that's the question. I think we've reached top of travel. Okay, that's a bummer. All right, well, I guess we're whacking it with a hammer until it collapses. There we go. See, who needs a shop press? I don't know what size socket I used, but it was a little smaller than the last one. than it should have been. I think I used the 1/16 before. This one was probably an inch. I don't know, but it popped through and is now jammed in here. So the hub came out with the outer bearing and the outer seal. This is trash for me now, at least. If you're rebuilding this, you need some kind of bearing separator, I think is the name of the tool. This is from a, speaking of bearings, this is from a, not bearing, this is from a ball joint press set. And it just happens to fit. You can see my socket has now gone inside of the inner bearing. This is from a ball joint press set. Fits right over the outside, right on the outside lip of the bearing. So we'll just set this up, rinse and repeat. Trying to get the other seal and the bearing out. Again, you can buy a, oh, wow, okay, there it went. That was easy. Now I just gotta get the bearing off of my socket. There's that inner seal and the inner bearing. Neato. And maybe it just lives on that socket now. That was 1 1/8. Don't do that. Use 1 1/16. I think this one, I can't remember. This one at least did not wedge itself inside of the bearing on it. But there we go. We have a knuckle that has, there's that inner snap ring that you'll pull out. I believe, is that for the races? I don't know. What the fuck's that in there for? I don't know. This is my first time working on these, but yeah. So installation is reverse of removal. We'll make this work in the daytime somehow, I'm sure. And I hope that this super legit, super official, very professional guide has helped you in some way. And if it hasn't, go fuck yourself. And good luck with your shitbox.